Remember, the goal of a defensive gun use is to get a deadly threat to stop their behavior, and today we see that. Hi friends, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. With me as always, the host of the Ask Podcast, Mike Williver, and I am John Correa.
And today's video comes to us from down the street in Phoenix, Arizona.
My boys. Palm pepper spray has recently reformulated for even more effect when you bless the deserving with the hot sauce. Palm is what I use between a harsh word and a gun and encourage everyone to do likewise. This guy, as we can see on the security footage, spends a couple minutes trying to break into this dollar store. They apparently spent more than $1 on the glass for the front doors. He's gonna finally get in there, which is gonna set the alarms off, and he's gonna try to get into the registers, not realizing that there's only dollar bills in there. There's not a lot of money. We have the officer shows up, we have his badge cam audio, so let's listen in to how he deals with this guy.
Hey, come out! Hey, 31 King, I've got one at gunpoint. He's got his hands above his head. He looks extremely 390. He's still inside the building. Hey! Step out of the building. Let me see your hands.
The officer gave Bia commands to come out of the store, but he refused.
Can you come out of the building? Well, you got in there, so come on out, man.
The officer moved to a position of cover behind his patrol vehicle and began to order Bia to show him his hands, but he refused.
Hey, get your hands out of your pants. Get your hands out of your pants, dude. Let me see your fucking hands. Show me your hands. I need to see your other hand.
Security footage from inside the store showed Bia standing at the broken door as the officer gave him commands. After a few moments, Bia, with his left hand on his head, moved his right hand to his waistline and turned sideways so that his right side was away from the officer. He then extended his hand and arm quickly from his waist towards the officer. That's when the officer involved shooting occurred. The officer fired one round and Bia fell to the ground, but it was later determined he was not struck by the bullet. The bullet was recovered from the doorframe.
Show me your hand, dude. Hey, 31 King 998.
You could see our dude actually continue to kind of like point his hand at the officer, but the officer did recognize after that first volley that he did not have anything in his hand. Guy gave up at that point, and they are going to then go get him into custody. If you go read the news stories that I've linked in the description, the shot actually did not hit this perp. It actually hit the door frame, and you know, he was cut up in his hands from the glass in those things. So they're going to get him into custody, do a little bit of first aid on his hands, but he wasn't badly hurt. He is facing a whole bunch of charges, and we're going to talk about our lessons.
You know, John, I spent some time in that part of Phoenix, it's known as Maryvale, doing some surveillance, and I can assure you it is a target-rich environment from the perspective of a law enforcement officer looking for crooks.
Tough part of town. Let's talk about lessons. You know, Mike, not exactly a high dollar target targeting the dollar store, but you know, the kind of guys that we see on this channel are not exactly Mensa members, are they?
You know, I think I'm cleared hot to say this to the public, but it's not a commonly known fact that most burglars start at the dollar store, to then move up to Big Lots or something similar. Then they graduate to, you know, Neiman Marcus, Macy's, that sort of thing. So this guy's just getting started. So I can't fault the bad guy too much. He's probably his first burglary.
Yeah. Now, I notice here interesting stuff. I love that this officer kind of slows his roll, sees what's going on. I also love here, Mike, that he has a pistol-mounted light. We can see he's got his pistol-mounted light on, and he turned it on. And he's using that to try to PID and see what's going on inside that store. Having more candela is a good thing here. Spend the money on the good light. Learn how to use the light, because if you think about it, he's got to get through that glass to see kind of what's going on in a store that's a little darkened on the other side of these lights on the outside. That takes a good number of candela. I also actually like here that it looks to me like the officer's not pointing his firearm at something he hasn't positively identified yet. So he's using the light well, using the spill well, and using it at a low ready position, which is kind of at the feet of the bad guy.
I would add to that, I love that he pulls up high beams, spotlight, lighting the front of that place up as much as possible. Now he's gotten out, and if the bad guy is in there, if he is armed, he's probably going to start shooting at the car if he shoots at anything. So he's now separated himself from the likely place where the bad guy would start shooting. The car light is great tactics. I love it.
Yeah, so bright car, me step off that car, still have my pistol mounted light, and he knows how to use it. It's kind of a rarity that we see a patrol officer using their pistol mounted light in a really good manner, but this guy really does. And when he establishes, nope, the guy's not listening to me, whatever, now he's gonna see where this guy is and light him up. And this is why a pistol mounted light is so useful, because you notice it lets him see that guy brightly. It lets him see, show me what's in your hands, let me see what's going on with you. This is why I think for every cop, a pistol mounted light, so helpful. The other thing that I really kind of want to note here is you note where he's pointing the gun right this second. You notice it's down here at the bottom. This is what we would call a low ready position. And it's funny, on Active Self-Protection Extra, sometimes people get on me a little bit that, oh, my low ready position is not low enough. Notice he's just down at the guy's feet. The guy's 10 yards away. This is just an inch or two of lowering the muzzle to keep you from pointing a gun at somebody you're not ready to shoot right this minute, but it also lets you see all of him, and I think this is an excellent technique that more need to adopt.
I'm not sure what the opposition to this is exactly, but I have a friend, a partner I used to work with, Jeff, great guy. He watched the video we did with the guy on the roof the other day, and how we were talking about not aiming directly at him. You use the spillover from the light, that sort of thing. He and I went back and forth for 10 minutes, and he didn't see my way of thinking. I think the critical thing here is, if you have a negligent discharge, no matter what the circumstances are, if it's a negligent discharge and you strike someone, your qualified immunity is out the window. So think about that. You can get from a low ready to a firing position in 0.3 of a second if you just practice it a little bit. It's not that hard.
It's absolutely true. And it doesn't have to be far down, just far enough to be at his feet, exactly what we see the officer doing here. Now, he's talked to this guy for a number of minutes, and so I actually really like that at this point, he slows his roll again, doesn't close the distance because that maintains his discretionary time, but instead he gets himself to a place of cover. And I think here, I just really want to commend this officer for recognizing, okay, I don't have to press the action here. I can slow down a little bit and use a little bit of cover and continue to issue commands and wait for more backup to show up to help me solve this problem. Great job in that.
100%. Something else I'd say about that. I've been in situations myself where I've taken a course of action that seemed prudent initially, and then circumstances change. Officers, don't let your pride get in the way. If you realize, hey, wait a minute, I was coming down hard on this person, or I was taking this tack, and things change or new information develops, don't be afraid to go, okay, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing here, which is what this officer did here, I think. Really a tremendous job. It's going, okay, I need to, like you said, slow my roll, get a little bit of cover, and start really assessing what's going on, because what he thought was going on may not be exactly what's happening.
Right. Now you can see, guy has his hands in his pockets, so we've said this many times. Show me your hands is not my favorite command. I'd rather see hands up or, hands in the sky or whatever, or don't move, freeze, right? Just freeze.
I'm a big fan of don't move,
yeah. Freeze is my favorite one, because then that just, keeps him where he's at. Of course, the guy decides instead to make the furtive gesture. Now, of course, we know in this moment that because we've watched this whole thing, it's just an empty hand. But coming from that place, pointing it out like that, he clearly wanted the officer to think that he had a gun in his hand. The officer did think that. Of course, it's any reasonable person would think in that moment that what he's facing there is somebody going to point a gun at him and pull the trigger. And so the officer presses the trigger himself. So I got no problems with the justification whatsoever here. I will say the officer missed. He put one in the door jamb, which ended up being an okay thing because the guy ends up giving up. But remember, misses don't usually win gunfights. You want to get a hit with that one, even though it was a better outcome here to get a miss.
It's strange to me, too, how the suspect went from, it seems like a good idea to burglarize a dollar store to suicidal. Obviously, he must have been so ashamed that he was caught burglarizing a dollar store that he thought death was the only option. It's very, very strange behavior on his part. And I don't think I've ever seen a crime in progress turn into an attempted suicide by a cop. It's pretty unique.
It really is. And I will say this, though. We talk about stopping the threat, and the psychological stop here worked. And so, again, we respond to the threat. That's really what we're doing here, responding to the threat that exists in the moment. And the officer, I think, did an excellent job here of seeing that there was no longer a threat And so he stopped because a psychological stop works, takes the win.
Absolutely. You know what I can't stand is the old the sound of racking a shotgun will stop a burglar dead in his tracks or whatever. I mean, maybe, but that's kind of an old wives' tale. But in this case, having the concussion of the round going off, followed by the shattering glass, was evidently enough to get his attention, and now he stopped doing whatever it is he was doing.
Well, so now again, the officer in this moment, wait a minute, what just happened? Now he's going to continue to see what's going on. But again, we shoot to stop the threat. Now, of course, I would recommend, of course, high level of marksmanship. Honest to goodness, this guy should have been shot in that moment, and it would have, it was dangerous to the officer to miss in that moment. So I would have preferred that he gotten a hit there rather than hit the door jamb. But it worked in this moment, and so he's going to continue to assess the situation. Now, I've sped it up simply kind of for the sake of time, but notice that the guy continues to point his hand at the officer, but by this point, the officer can see, because there's been enough time, that there's nothing in his hand. And this is another plug, in my opinion, for having a very bright light on your gun if you're a law enforcement officer. And again, I don't think white light is necessary for private citizens on a pistol, but for a law enforcement officer, for exactly this kind of incident where you're not leaving, but you got to see what's in that guy's hands, this is why I really like that, because it kept this officer from shooting this guy once he's able to recognize, no, the guy's bluffing.
Yep, 100%. I just can't stress enough how important a light is, but moreover, training with that light.
Yes.
It seems like the simplest thing in the world, that you would just throw a light on the gun, and when you need it, turn it on. And that seems reasonable until you are under stress and you've never practiced, you've never rehearsed how you're going to get that gun light on. In that half a second it takes you to use your offhand and a non-firing grip to turn the thing on could mean the difference between life and death. For you, a partner, or a member of the public, it could mean that you lose a gunfight. And we don't want you officers to lose any gunfights ever.
No, we don't want to, if you get in a bit of gunfight, we want you to win. I also think that these officers did a great job finally. Okay, one guy, is going to put his gun away, get him into custody. Great job there, splitting responsibilities and communicating well. Man, I think another pretty darn good job here by my hometown team. Phoenix PD, you covered your ass.